have from looking at that graphic is, hey, Porygon 2 Ursaluna is back. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, right? This combo won the European International Championships, and that was in a format with more power as well. So it's no surprise that now the power has decreased. You don't have to face things that are really strong, like Urshifu, for example. It is really darn good. But we are ready to get into our top 8 matchup, and it is going to be an awesome one because that is a Vivillon.
It is a Vivillon. So you wanted to see your bug types. Sadly, we didn't get a chance to see Volby, but are you interested in a Vivillon?
Yes, I'll take anything. Just give me a single bug at this point, please.
Well, the Vivillon is going to be sort of fulfilling a similar supportive role, right? It has Sleep Powder, Rage Powder. It also has Hurricane with Compound Eye, so it's going to be able to increase the accuracy of those moves at least a little bit. Sleep Powder is still not 100% accurate, even with that ability, so it will have a chance to miss.
Yeah, but far more consistent. You normally see Sleep Powder and Hurricane on a Pokemon's moveset, and you're like, oh my goodness, like, good luck. But with the Compound Eyes, so much more consistent. And Vivillon, just a really unique support option, right? Not only can you put things to sleep, but you can also deal damage with the Hurricane. It's not the slowest Pokemon either, right? Like Amoonguss is sometimes something considered being used for Rage Powder as well as Spore. But the Vivillon here provides a very different set of tools. Of course, you're flying type as well, so synergizes so nicely with that Garchomp that you see right next to it. You can go straight away for something like Sleep Powder into the Earthquakes. And I think Porygon 2 on this team, really interesting as well. Normally, you know, you see more slow Pokemon built around the Porygon 2, something like that Ursaluna, but we've actually got Garchomp here as a fast way to deal ground type damage rather than Ursaluna.
And if you really wanted to set the Trick Room, then you've got something like Golden Go, Primarina. You can actually train those to be pretty much on the slower side in terms of the meta format, and still find a way to be able to use the Trick Room that way. Zee, though, I mean, what a phenomenal player that they have been over the course of so many seasons. Even just looking back at the 2024 season, got top 16 at NAIC, got top 8 at San Antonio. Just very consistent results every couple of months or so. Zee is in top cut, in the top tables.
Yeah, Zee had one of my favorite teams from the North American International Championships, bringing Talonflame to that event when most people were using Whimsicott with the Miraidon team compositions. And so they are still looking for their first big victory. You know, came as close as making it to the finals of regionals before, but will they be able to finally secure a victory and win an entire tournament? It's going to be a very tough opponent because this is Paul Chua that we're talking about, using that multi-scale Dragonite with that Flying Terra Blast, and of course the Alolan Ninetales.
And the Lumberry. So you want to put it to sleep? That's unfortunate. You could miss, or that Lumberry is going to wake you up immediately. So Dragonite becomes a very good Pokemon to have at the front, but you also have so many other pieces to be able to support it. We kind of saw some Garchomp interactions when Paul Chua was versus Justin Karas on our stream match yesterday, so maybe something else that you might say, oh, well, Garchomp versus Garchomp, again, that's also something you have to pay attention to.
Totally, and I think one thing that's really funny about the Garchomp war here is that both of them are using a defensive Terra that's weak to ground. You've got the Steel Terra here on Paul's end, you've got the Fire Terra on Zee's end, and so if you go for that defensive Terra and your opponent reads it and goes for Stomping Tantrum into it, I think that could be something that'd be impactful as well. Now, because this is multi-skill Dragonite, Incineroar from Zee's end, of course, can intimidate it. You can flinch it with that Fake Out, but how safe do you feel bringing Incineroar when there's a King Gambit on the opposing side? And this is a King Gambit with low kick as well. It's not the set that normally runs just Dark type attacks and Iron Head, for example. And so that's one of the things that I'm really curious about as well. Assault Vest King Gambit here, I think, can be scary, but it does have to fight against the Fighting Terra Blast Porygon 2 from the opposing side.
Yeah, I mean, that Assault Vest is certainly going to help a little bit with that, and you can also Terrastalize to the Dark type so that you aren't going to be 4 times weak to that Fighting Terra Blast. But I look at Golden Go, I look at Primarina, and King Gambit would love to be on the other side of both of those.
Absolutely. We are getting right into this first game, and it's going to be the Incineroar and the Dragonite. This Dragonite has been so clutch for Paul Chua, and Vivillon has hit the field.
Ooh, very exciting here. You've got the Vivillon to be able to increase the speeds. You've got the Garchomp as well that just can go for some of these super fast attacks. But what about this Flying Dragonite on the other side?
You called out the Lumberry. That makes it so much tougher for the Vivillon to be effective early on in this game, right? Now, you also are staring down the Incineroar with safety goggles, and so Paul with the perfect lead here to cover for Sleep Powder Vivillon specifically. You will not be able to put either of these Pokemon to sleep on turn 1. Vivillon is way less effective, and that's why you're going to see Zee swap it out right now.
You also get to keep that Focus Sash intact for a little bit later. maybe it will end up becoming a little bit more powerful in later parts of this game. But as we see the Porygon 2 hit the field, it is going to get a download boost. And right off the bat, let's see the Terra.
Yep, it is going to be the Terra going on to the Dragonite. This is such a consistent option from Paul's end, being able to just dish out so much damage with that Terra Blast. Of course, this also takes away your Dragon typing, so you don't have to worry about Dragon Claw hitting you for super effective damage. Fake Out going into the Garchomp, though, just to prevent it from attacking this turn. And I think Paul was basically one step ahead here with the lead, catching Vivian off guard and having the perfect anti-Vivian lead.
And you've got the Terra Blast, which is going to do a huge amount of damage here into that Garchomp. It's almost taken out in one fell swoop.
That's so much damage. Zee had the opportunity to potentially protect the Garchomp that turn, right, but was potentially worried about a double up going onto the opposing side. Paul's just so good with playing with this Dragonite in this tournament so far. And so, you know, Porygon now also in an awkward spot. You're facing down the knockoff pressure from the Incineroar from the opposing side as well. And so I think Paul is off to a really, really strong start. Porygon 2 also notably did not get a special attack boost there either, so you're not even dealing that much damage. Incineroar, I think, a really good switch in. I thought maybe it could have been switched in the previous turn to get the Intimidate off immediately. Garchomp's, you know, HP is still relatively low right now.
Yeah, but you do have to worry maybe a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so it's going to be able to do a little bit back in terms of the rough skin, but Garchomp gets a chance to go for the Stomping Tantrum. It is going to be intimidating, but it's still enough to get the one-hit knockout into the Incineroar.
And that is one interaction because you got flinched by that Fake Out. Yeah, the Stomping Tantrum dealing the increased damage there as well, so that is a really good trade for Zee.
It's so good because now you get a chance to actually bring this Porygon 2 back in scot-free, still at full HP with your Incineroar that can help you go for a Fake Out.
Yeah, I thought like Paul was just off to such a strong start, but what a huge survival that was. And knocking out Incineroar is such a big deal as well because now you clear the Pokemon that can remove your Eviolite on Porygon 2. Kingambit does hit the field. I think Paul would have preferred Kingambit to be on the field when Incineroar came in. Download now will get the special attack boost as well. And let's not forget the Terra on this Porygon 2. It is going to be that fighting Terra Blast. So right now, a lot of offensive pressure coming out from Zee's end, actually.
I will say, though, because this Dragonite does have that Terraflying Terra Blast, I know it's been intimidated, but you are at least able to hit that Porygon 2 super effectively if it does go for the Terastallization. Just feels awful that it might be the Kingambit you have to sacrifice in order to actually put that damage down.
Yeah, the Kingambit's actually caught in a really bad spot right now. You already are facing down Flare Blitz and Incineroar, but you're also facing down the threat of Terra fighting Terra Blast. Now, you might not want to go for that Terra immediately, right? You can see Zee's opting to not go for that because you're worried about Dragonite then going for flying Terra Blast onto you. So, a double up into that slot. It's going to be a Moongus coming in, but we saw the attacks here coming out from Zee's end. Really good targeting here. It's going to be the Flare Blitz. That's going to deal super effective damage, and that just does so much immediately.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to take that recoil, but it's going to be the follow-up from that. After the Citrus Berry is consumed, that's going to put this Amoonguss on a huge timer. Might even potentially be knocked out here.
I think so.
Is going to just go into that with the special attack boost. And so Amoonguss, another key piece here for Paul to lose so early.
Yeah, fantastic play from Zee after what was, I thought, a fairly tough turn one. Low kick does not even knock out the Incineroar either. So, interesting endgame here. Paul brings the Dragonite back out. Of course, that multi-scale has been broken. There is still the Vivian in the back as well.
Ooh, you can go for a knockoff here too. I mean, when you look at that, that means that you can get rid of the Lumberry and then you can actually put this to sleep if you want to without the threat of this Dragonite knocking you out. Still have that Focus Sash as well.
Yeah, one of my big questions is Porygon's 2's Ice Beam into the Dragonite. There is that fighting Terra Blast, but once again, you don't want to just go for Terra fighting and then eat up a Terra Blast from Paul's end, right? So you can see Zee here considering, okay, maybe I just want to go for Flare Blitz, Ice Beam. Let me just go for the super effective attacks onto both. Paul, of course, has Sucker Punch pressure with that Kingambit. You have Extreme Speed pressure, and of course, you do pressure with Terra Blast. But looks like Zee here opting for a maybe more defensive play. You're seeing potentially hovering the Recover and the Parting Shot. Ooh, we're getting low on timer, but it's going to be the Flare Blitz and the Recover here. Sucker Punch into the Porygon. It's going to fail. The Recover works. Here's the Terra Blast. Is it into Porygon as well? It is.
Wow.
That's the perfect play by Zee here.
Because that Recover at the end of the turn is going to be able to heal back up all of that damage, and this Dragonite gets chunked by the Flare Blitz.
Yeah, but Incineroar faints, and you don't mind that because now it's a free switch in back into the Vivian.
Yeah, I think that also makes a lot of sense why Porygon 2 also would not want to go for something like the Trick Room, because yes, here comes the Vivian, here comes the Sleep Powder pressure, also Hurricane, just so many tools at the disposal for this Vivian.
Totally. I think you could just Sleep Powder now into the King Gambit and Ice Beam into the Dragonite. As it looks like that's what they're considering here. And it's really consistent, right? Dragonite, of course, could protect, but what is King Gambit going to do? You're just going to get hit by Sleep Powder. And there's just going to be the extreme speed here. So I like the idea, just try to finish off the Vivian, but basically what Paul is hoping for here is a mistake. For some reason, you click Hurricane. There's really no other way, I think, to get around this, because once Ice Beam KOs Dragonite, you can just go for that Fighting Terra with Porygon and then Terra Blast King Gambit. So this Fighting Terra Porygon 2 with Terra Blast picking up in this metagame has been absolutely huge. And what a great comeback from Zee after what I thought was a really tough turn 1.
Yeah, the turn 1 was really difficult. The fact that you were losing your Garchomp right off the bat meant that you didn't have that same type of pressure, an additional way to potentially hit this King Gambit and even this Incineroar, but it was able to kind of dish back out that Stomping Tantrum, the critical survival from that extreme speed. It's just amazing. Zee found a great line back into the game.
Yeah, once again, like Stomping Tantrum getting that increase in power because the Garchomp was flinched on turn 1. Normally, you know, Clear Amulet is an item that people have been using on Garchomp, but it feels like Life Orb. A lot of players realize, you know, I just need the extra damage output. You can intimidate me. I don't care, because Garchomp still has a really good matchup into Incineroar, right? So once again, such a critical turn here. Stomping Tantrum just knocks out the Incineroar despite being intimidated. That clears it out of the way immediately. And of course, hanging off from that extreme speed. I think Garchomp had 4 HP, right? So if Garchomp just faints there outright, the Incineroar can parting shot. It can go for a knockoff, and that game looks really different. But a critical knockout, perfect positioning with Porygon, and that recover play was awesome as well. You know, baiting out the damage onto the Porygon, recognizing, hey, I think Porygon can win, but I need to get Vivian in safely, so let me just Flare Blitz. If you knock out my Incineroar, great, you've given me the free switch into Vivian that I was looking for, and I think that turn specifically probably played out even better than Zee could have expected it to.
How many things can actually take out a Porygon 2 also?
Right.
When you think about it, would the double up of the Kowtow as well as the Terra Blast actually been enough?
I don't think so.
It's hard to call.
It's such a bulky Pokemon, exactly. And what I really love about the Porygon here from Zee's end is that it just does so much damage, right? You've got Terra Blast with that fighting threat, but also just regular Terra Blast is so good, and we're just going to get right into it. So it's going to be Incineroar and King Gambit this time around, and Incineroar here will get the Defiant boost, but King Gambit, of course, can't protect, so you can at least fake it out on the first turn. We see the faster Intimidate from Zee's end so far as well.
Yeah, so it should tell us that maybe Zee's Incineroar is faster in this scenario, and this King Gambit is not safe. As you call out the fake out into that slot, you can also just hit it. Even if it's going to be neutral damage as the King Gambit tears to Dark, you can still double up into that slot if you really wanted to.
Totally. We're going to see Garchomp just switch out here, though, and Incineroar did not click fake out. So this is an opportunity for King Gambit to do a lot of damage, but Primarina, a nice switch in to resist a fair bit of the damage, and Sucker Punch here is just going to fail, so Zee making it a fantastic play. Flare Blitz just comes out. That's a lot of damage to get onto King Gambit this early on.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be more than half, so this King Gambit, I mean, even with the Assault Vest, I kind of look at Primarina still being able to dish out a significant amount. Maybe Moonblast or something, able to help sort of pick it off. But this parting shot at least allows Paul to pivot something else in that might be able to help out with this Primarina a little more.
Yeah, there's so many interactions here going on, right? I think Paul probably doesn't want to click fake out into the Garchomp because you're worried about the Stomping Tantrum interaction once again. And okay, that is a fun hover. Oh, I like it. The idea here is you can haze to get rid of these stat drops, namely that Intimidate. Okay, looks like considering it, just going for a Hyper Voice here potentially instead. Of course, critically right now, the Amoonguss is very good as a defensive piece, but Zee does have the safety goggles on Incineroar, so you will not be able to redirect a Flare Blitz away. King Gambit, of course, though, could switch back out into the Incineroar, but if you switch into Incineroar, then you're going to be hit by a Hyper Voice, and it looks like it is Incineroar coming back in.
You get the Intimidate drop down onto the Incineroar, which will help out there, but as you said, like, poor Primarina as a special attacker, your Incineroar is going to be on the receiving end of a lot of hurt. That's going to be another 50% chunk to this Incineroar, and Paul is starting to lose out on quite a bit of HP on his Pokemon.
Yeah, critical turn, though, because Amoonguss does get the opportunity to go for an attack. You'd have to imagine it's Spore into Primarina right now as it is, and taking advantage of the fact that Zee has not brought too many Amoonguss counters. I think Amoonguss, a big Pokemon into this matchup, and so now the Primarina slot is left completely exposed. However, the downside is you have Incineroar and Amoonguss on Paul's end, so Paul doesn't actually have that much damage this turn against this duo, so you're going to want to make for a switch, fish for something, maybe get Dragonite, which might be your final Pokemon, back in. Paul, of course, by bringing in the Amoonguss, has to drop one of Dragonite or Garchomp.
And maybe it is going to be the Garchomp. It's so tough to think about bringing Garchomp into this matchup because you know that there's going to be a Primarina, but it is the Kingambit making an appearance again. A little bit more safe knowing that the Incineroar has been intimidated this time around.
Yeah, and it's going to be knockoff here, so Amoonguss does have the ability to go for side Pollen Puff right now, which would be huge. You heal Gambit all the way back up, and there is that side Pollen Puff.
Fantastic. So all of the damage that Flare Blitz had done at the very beginning of the game is gone, and you're able to deal with this Hyper Voice way better from this Primarina.
Yeah, there was the opportunity for Incineroar to actually have clicked Flare Blitz into the Kingambit switch in, but obviously then you'd be Flare Blitzing Incineroar. How consistent does that feel? So Flare Blitz comes out into the Amoonguss, but this Amoonguss just so difficult to knock out with all of its bulk and with the Intimidate. Low kick comes out as well, and oh, Incineroar hangs on with just the sliver of HP here. Another side Pollen Puff here, and Primarina's really hoping to wake up sooner than later, but even if it wakes up, you're not doing that much damage with Hyper Voice or Moonblast.
Another Flare Blitz might do it though into this Amoonguss, especially because its Citrus Berry got knocked off. It doesn't have that recovery anymore, but it looks like it could still be a very close call for this Flare Blitz to finish up the job.
Yeah, you could totally just switch out into Incineroar from Paul's end. You get that Regenerator, get an Intimidate as well, but no switch, and Primarina wakes up. It is just going to go for the Protect this turn, so no offense, but critically Amoonguss not pivoting out this turn.
No, but the Sucker Punch with this Incineroar so low, able to pick off the Incineroar before it's able to dish out that extra damage onto the Amoonguss. Now that's out of the way, this Kingambit is in a pretty good spot outside of that Garchomp.
Yeah, I like that Sucker Punch play as well. I think you could switch into the Incineroar, but Paul might want to save the Incineroar specifically to bring out against this Garchomp right now. But I do think Garchomp and Primarina in combination right now exert a ton of offensive pressure in combination with each other. And ooh, I like this. Just saying, I'm going to go for Life Orb Earthquake. What do you have to deal with this right now?
Maybe a Terra? Maybe a Terra here onto the Kingambit would be able to keep it safe. At least you can Terastallize away from your Steel typing, but the Incineroar comes in just to give a bit more staying power, as the Intimidate drop onto the Garchomp will help to limit that damage just a little bit, but there's no Terra. It's just going to be the Earthquake into the Kingambit, and the Incineroar gets knocked out too on the switch in.
Yeah, no Terra, recognizing if I Terra into Dark, I just get hit by Moonblast, and that does super effective damage. So now, can Assault Vest Kingambit survive Moonblast here? This also could activate Defiant. It does survive! It's Defiant! Activates! Are you kidding me?
That is the perfect thing!
Oh, where did it target? It's gonna be the Kowtow Cleave +2 attack into the Garchomp for a one-hit KO! That is the risk of going for Moonblast there, but of course, Zee gets that most of the time. You don't get that special attack drop. That's so scary. That was the worst time to get that secondary effect.
And the Rough Skin isn't even enough to actually knock out this Kingambit.
Yeah,
it's
hangs
still
out with
hanging
1
around.
HP, and there it is. Dragonite is the last one. I think Zee making a really consistent and safe play. The Moonblast covers for the Terra on the Kingambit, but Kingambit hangs on with that bulk and critically actually gets some extra damage thanks to that Defiant.
Wow, and now you get a chance to actually save this Terra as well for the Dragonite. And so you know that you're not going to be taking 4 times the damage from something like an Ice Beam, something like a Moonblast. Yes, you have to give up maybe your resistance to those Water-type attacks, but you don't care. You're going to be able to do a tremendous amount of damage now with this Dragonite, and the Incineroar's off the table. No Intimidates.
That's right, exactly. And Primarina here, you know, you have to still break the multi-skill on Dragonite as well. Porygon doesn't have Protect here, so let's see if Paul just went for the double up into it. There's Sucker Punch. Look how much damage he does after that Defiant. Now, Terra Blast does go into Primarina, so critically not a double up there into the Porygon. I think Porygon would have even survived Terra Blast, but then you're Extreme Speed KO range. Ice Beam now finishes off the Kingambit, but of course, this grants Paul a free switch in back into the Amoonguss.
Yeah, and that's going to have a little bit more of the recovery as well with your generator. So you now also have the opportunity to just go for the Rage Powder, at least direct away an attack from this Primarina, force it to have to go into something like the Hyper Voice instead. And you don't have to play the mind games anymore either if Porygon 2 decides to go for cover and Sucker Punch.
Yeah, this is an intense turn. So Terra Blast here, I don't think it'll knock out Porygon, but let's see. Are you targeting Porygon? Yes. Does it get the KO right now? I think it's close, and it does not. And that is absolutely huge because Hyper Voice now will come out. Amoonguss wouldn't be able to do enough damage if Ice Beam KOs Dragonite. Does it get the KO? It does not either. So trading a lot of damage, but now the Spore comes out. I was thinking, hey, if you actually get the knockout with that Ice Beam, then you've got Porygon and Primarina out against an Amoonguss that is just relatively low, but with that, Porygon now asleep.
That's so tricky. I mean, you're going to have to take a mandatory turn of sleep if you are this Porygon 2. It's going to give this Dragonite another chance to get off an attack. It's going to be the Primarina on the receiving end, and it is knocked out. Just Porygon 2 left with a sliver of HP, and then Amoonguss still having an opportunity to go for an attack. And so we're going to be looking at a game number 3 as this Pollen Puff is going to finish up the job.
Wow. I cannot stress how important that Moonblast special attack drop was. It allowed the King Gambit to suddenly just be so much more activated. And it's funny because we even saw Defiant activate in the beginning of this game, but I thought Zee did such a good job forcing the King Gambit out. The Earthquake plus Moonblast play works out so frequently. It covers for Paul going for Dark Terra as well. The only way where that turn becomes a disaster is if you get that special attack drop from the Moonblast. Primarina here able to wake up, of course, but not super relevant in this current game state. And then the Sucker Punch onto Incineroar as well. So this has been a really fun set to watch where it feels like one player gains an advantage, but then the other player is able to claw back into it. And yeah, this is also a testament to how bulky King Gambit is. It survives the -1 Life Orb Earthquake into Moonblast. And this Primarina, not being Choice Specs, not being Life Orb, does not have that extra bit of damage output it needs to get the knockout.
The Defiant and the Kowtow Cleave to just finish off this Garchomp. And then it doesn't even get knocked out from the Rough Skin recoil either.
Yeah.
So this King Gambit is around to continue to just power on through this second game. But this is sort of what you should expect out of 2 of the best players we have in North America. This is a set that has really delivered on so many fronts.
Yeah, so let's talk about what Zee can do, right? The Amoonguss was a huge problem in that game, being able to put things to sleep. So you've got the Vivillon, which did not come out in game 2. I think Zee recognizing in game 1, well, Vivillon was not very effective into your Incineroar, into your Dragonite. Seems like you're willing to bring both of those out, right? What Vivillon can do, however, of course, is pressure with Hurricane, super effective damage into Amoonguss. You've also got Golden Go, which is really strong into Amoonguss because, of course, you are immune to the Spore. You can just set up with Nasty Plot in front of it. However, if you bring out that Golden Go, it's really weak to Garchomp on the opposing side. So here we go. A Alolan Ninetales now has hit the field, and there's the Vivillon and the Garchomp. I think Zee trying to adjust with the Vivillon, but Ninetales, such a nice Pokemon here. It puts on a lot of pressure with that Blizzard immediately, and Paul gets the Intimidate here onto the Garchomp as well.
Oh, you have to go for a Sleep Powder here, and I think you just have to go all out on the offensive, because otherwise this Ninetales could really do a number to you. As we said before, this is going to be more of an offensive variant for this Ninetales with Blizzard and Freeze Dry. It also has Encore. That might be something that comes into play here too, but it's going to be the Terastallization onto the Garchomp first to the Fire Terra.
Okay, where is the Incineroar targeting right now with Fake Out? I think that's my first question. I love the Fire Terra here, just really good defensively, saying, you know what, if I Fire Terra, you just do way less damage. It's going to be Protect actually coming out from the Ninetales. Okay, so deciding to play a little bit more defensively to start. Garchomp can start off with the Earthquake.
Yeah, there's no fake out at all. So this Incineroar is going to have to take this Earthquake. At least it is spread damage, so it's not going to just be concentrated onto the Incineroar. And with that Intimidate drop, it is going to survive. So the Sleep Powder, oh, it's also not going to be able to find its mark because of the Protect. So great job from Paul there to be able to bypass that. But with the knockoff, you are going to already break the Focus Sash of this Vivillon.
Yeah, I like that play a lot. One other thing that Zee had the opportunity to go for was the Ghost Terror on Vivillon. So what Paul really didn't want to happen is you Ghost Terror, I Fake Out into you and try to just Blizzard, and then you put me to sleep. So that was a really safe play. The only thing that could have counteracted this was a Hurricane plus Earthquake double up onto the Incineroar. Earthquake, by the way, there still did so much damage with the Intimidate.
It really did. And I think the other thing, though, about the Ghost Terror, too, is, you know, Zee would have also hit the Vivillon with the Earthquake, because it does change the typing there, but we are going to see a Protect just as a defensive play coming out from Zee's Vivillon. The Blizzard now in play here for Paul, as it is going to be able to hit this Garchomp. It's no longer super effective with the Fire Terror. It's also going to end up resisting that damage, but we also see the Earthquake again. Dragonite not going to fall to this, but the Alolan Ninetales has to take this attack.
Yeah, but how much does this do? Yeah, with the Intimidate and that Snow Defense buff, the answer is not very much damage, and so Zee is down the Terra right now, and I think Paul's in a very good offensive position in this specific turn, but I really like Zee's play this turn. Recognize, okay, you've gotten the Intimidate onto me. I'm not really going to do that much damage. Time to get Porygon 2 out. Now it might be time to, you know, try to do damage with this Porygon 2 under Trick Room and potentially afterwards if you want to set up Trick Room. Critically, though, only gets an attack boost, not a special attack boost from that download. Would
have been much nicer to have that, but we do see a full rotation from Zee to also bring in this Incineroar, so the Intimidate onto the Dragonite will certainly help out. Multi-Scale is still active, though, so you're going to have to find a way to break that in the next couple of turns, as it's Terra time for Paul as well. The Dragonite, the tried and true, gonna get that Terra flying again.
Terra Flying Dragonite, of course, now weakened a little bit by the Intimidate, but -1 Terra Blast will still deal reasonable damage. Let's see where it goes into. And do any freezes come out right now from Blizzard? Always a chance for a freeze. Not going to be one this turn, though.
So the Terra Blast, just to follow that damage up into the Porygon 2, it's so tanky. I mean, this Porygon 2 is going to be a pain to actually remove.
So right now, Zee hovering the Fake Out plus the Recover play. I think the Fake Out into Dragonite is so obvious that Zee might expect the Dragonite to just protect or maybe switch out into Incineroar. Or say, you know what, you're intimidated, but no protects, no switches, it's just Blizzard. Another chance for a freeze!
It does!
And there it is, onto the Incineroar.
It was trying to go for a Flare Blitz to finish off this Alolan Ninetales, and it's not going to be able to get a chance to do that on this turn. So the Terra Blast to fall into the Porygon 2 brings it very, very low. But Incineroar's Flare Blitz is going to melt the ice here as it's able to do that through that move. What a unique interaction we get a chance to see play out.
Yeah, critically there, because he had locked in Flare Blitz, saves it from the freeze. Porygon getting frozen there, I think, could have been a lot scarier, as it is able to recover. So Zee now playing really nicely defensively, recognizing, hey, you don't have that much damage output with this intimidated Dragonite. This is why people often like running Inner Focus on the Dragonite, right? So Incineroar now able to come back out from Paul's end. But the Dragonite is still at -1 attack from the opposing side, so kind of feels pressure to switch out. And the big question is, what is the final Pokemon from Paul's end? He has made the adjustment into Ninetales. I think Garchomp would be really powerful this time around, but you still have to worry about Ice Beam Porygon 2. It could still very likely be that King Gambit with a lot of pressure offensively from it as well. So let's see. Ooh, there's the parting shot into the Dragon. I mean, if that were to switch into King Gambit, that would make this very interesting.
That would make this very interesting. We've already seen what a +1 Kowtow can do, but it's not going to be any switches as the Terra Blast is going to fire out from this Dragonite into the Incineroar with a crit. It just gets knocked out. So all of those Intimidate drops completely negated by the crit.
Oh, and now Porygon can recover, but Incineroar has the opportunity to go for a knockoff, remove that Eviolite, make Porygon 2 so much less tanky. Looks like Paul's going to actually parting shot here, saying, you know what? I don't care about your Eviolite. I'll come deal with your Porygon later on. What I'm going to focus on right now is just knocking out everything around it, because if I keep decreasing your special attack, you're just not actually going to deal that much damage. So now the key question is, what is the final Pokemon? That is the King Gambit coming out.
Wow, so King Gambit, I mean, you don't get a chance to get the Defiant drop from the Incineroar anymore, but you're still putting on a good amount of pressure. This Garchomp as well, like, does it want to lock into an Earthquake here? It's risky when you have this Porygon next to you, even though it is very tanky.
Okay, going for that Stomping Tantrum option. Porygon, however, cannot do any damage into the King Gambit. With Terra committed so early on, that fighting Terra Blast no longer an option. So right now, I think if you're Paul, of course, you could consider just switching that Incineroar back in, get the Intimidate into the Garchomp, and then just use King Gambit offensively. But willing to just stay in here, it's just going to be Dragon Claw. That critically breaks the multi-skill, but takes so much damage in return this turn, and it's going to be the Terra Blast coming out once again.
And the Terra Blast is into the Garchomp just to be able to help soften it up. It's going to be down to just a sliver of HP as the Porygon 2 even isn't able to get the knockout because, oh, but it gets the freeze onto the Dragonite.
There's the Lumberry.
Oh my gosh, there's just been so many freezes around here and so many great ways for these players to actually work around it, whether it was the Flare Blitz, the Lumberry. It has been so back and forth in this set.
Yeah, so Paul says, you know what, I don't think I really need to switch. I'm down to just attack here right now. There was the potential of Garchomp to go for the Life Orb Stomping Tantrum just into the King Gambit slot. Finally sees the switch, though. And this, like, I think Paul had the opportunity to switch the last couple of turns and kind of baits Zee into thinking, I'm going to make the switch. Doesn't make the switch, but finally does it.
And with this attack drop now, maybe the King Gambit is just very easily able to survive on this next attack. And in fact, there's not even going to be an attack coming out from the Garchomp. Just a protect as the Porygon goes for the Ice Beam. Incineroar takes that like a champ, though. Like, it already, I think, had an attack boost on the Porygon. And so now you just keep taking Kowtow after Kowtow.
Fantastic play there by Paul, by the way. It makes the read like Garchomp is going to protect, doesn't even try to Sucker Punch into that slot, just gets the Kowtow in. And Paul Chua will be advancing to the top 4. What a set against Zee there. We saw so many adjustments, and I don't know, I think if the Moonblast special attack drop doesn't happen onto King Gambit in that second game, Zee's in a really, really good spot. Paul making so many adjustments throughout the course of the set. Drops the Garchomp, brings the Amoonguss, brings the Alolan Ninetales. It's a mix-up after mix-up after mix-up, and this is a reason why he's one of the greatest players of all time.
Always has to keep everybody guessing, opponents and everybody watching alike. So much fun to watch both of them play out, though, this set.